the law company, Luther Law Company. It's a German law company with an office here in Bangkok. Tomorrow, 2 more colleagues from Fabian will join us as well and be the moderator. And then after that, we go in the workshop, as I said. Okay, so here we have me, Sanit. I don't think I need to introduce. Do you know who this guy is? Does anybody know what's his name? No. I give you 3 options. Sanit, Siegfried, Saint. What's his name? Huh? Nobody knows you. Nobody knows. You did something wrong during the day. Okay, this is Sanit, and then Fabian is on the right-hand side. Okay, these are the 3 speakers, and the 3 modules are, in the first module, the aspect of a partner framework, typical deal breaker or stopper of the deal. Then what we talk a little bit about controlling budget, strategy documents, legal and contractual aspects, and then Fabian will really dive with a case study where he gives you different examples. Company A is doing that, company B is doing that, how it really could work in the legal world. And to start the slide, I want to show you a typical framework. And I think I like this strategic partnership framework because for me it's a very logical process. You start with your defined or with your desired outcome. And that is very much what we said in the morning. What is your vision? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to achieve for yourself, for your business, for your company, for your show, maybe for the people who are working in your team? What is the goal? Because that dictates or this defines very much who the dream partner for you is. Then in the next packet is identify type of partnership for the outcome. Do you want to grow? Maybe you want to have an international partner. Do you want to grow in a specific region? Maybe you need a partner in India or in China. Do you want to learn from new developments? Maybe you need a very innovative company to be a partner. Or do you want to cash in? Then you need a very sales-driven partner with money to come out. Then you identify your potential partners, define the roles and responsibilities. I think we talked about this a lot during the day. Establish and manage the partnership, and then assess an effectiveness of a partnership. So this is a little bit the roadmap, or this is a little bit the framework. A couple of things will influence how successful or not successful you will be when you go through this framework. One thing is the current life cycle of the show. We will have a slide about the life cycle. Shows normally have a life cycle. Often it's quite hard to identify on which stage of the life cycle your show is. For sure, the buying company would like that your show is growing. I think Nino just said it only makes sense for Tarsus if the show can grow quicker than it would grow if you do the show on your own. Who is the previous owner? Who are the investors? With which associations does the show have contracts? And what are the major companies? And this thing with the associations, I want to underline it for 5 minutes, and I want to explain it for 5 minutes. Associations can be relevant in 2 ways for the show. So A, very often associations are also owner of shows. They're owning a share of the show. Very often when they own a show, they see that as a cash cow to finance their membership services. They run through their associations, or sometimes shows give a very minority part to the association because they want to bind the association to their show before it's done by a competitor. I think the relationship with an association is maybe the most sensitive you can have in your trade show. And that comes, and this is the second aspect, that comes very much down to who is sitting in the driver's seat when it comes to show strategy, and when it comes to show development, and when it comes to future partnerships. If you are not sitting in that driver's seat, if you are sitting in the co-pilot seat, you are not a good target for any buyer, because he immediately has his hand bound and has to deal with an association which is often not profitability driven, but it's driven by enhancing the services for their member companies. Very often associations are even under pressure not to be too profitable, but to launch and to execute good services for their member companies. So even if an association might be a minority shareholder and might only own 5% of the show, when you have the situation that in the decision-making process they are acting like their own 30, 40, 50, 51%, then this is a problem for any future investor. And the same is for your key accounts. I know shows who don't exist anymore because the association and the key account said, we kill this show. I think I gave you one example this morning about this show in the Midlands from England, the area where Robinhood is coming from, where actually 5, 6 key accounts gathered and said, this show is not developing anymore. We want to kill the show so that another organizer can relaunch the show. We don't want to have this organizer anymore. If that happens, practically every ownership, who owns which shares, is obsolete because they can have the power to do that. If 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 key accounts drop out on the same day, the show is done. What happens with CeBIT? What happens with CeBIT? Biggest IT show in the world. I remember the times when CeBIT was an absolutely amazing show. Hanover, the city, was proud of CeBIT, occupied the whole venue. I didn't go to CeBIT anymore because for me it was too big. I couldn't walk the show in 2 days because it was too big. Then the show concept became a little bit agent, and then the team, and I know the team in Hanover, they were sitting down and say, let's do really something innovative. Let's change the concept. They looked at Dreamforce from Salesforce. They looked at Mobile World Congress. They looked a little bit at the Web Summit. So they really did their research. They gathered, and they put a whole year of enthusiasm, of hard blood, of research in to change this big monster of a show, CeBIT, and they tried to festivalize it. And I was really hoping that they are successful because A, I know the people and they are very, very nice people. B, they were working their socks off for a whole year. But C, also, our industry is not innovation driven, and it's painful to say that, but our industry is not primarily innovation driven. So I was really hoping that they will create a best practice example that you can change a show, that you can innovate a show. Why do I say that our industry is not innovation driven? A very, very easy example. Look on a telephone from 1950 and look on a telephone from 2022. These are two totally different machines, totally different devices. I gave my daughter once a telephone from 1980. She didn't know what to do with that because this dial thing where you dial that way, she didn't know how to operate a telephone that is 30, 40 years ago. Look at a trade show from 1950 and look at a trade show from 2022. The biggest difference, and now I'm a little bit provoking, the biggest difference is that this photo is black and white and this photo is in color. You still see many stands in a hall. So we have innovated far less than other companies have to innovate, like the car industry or the soft industry or the gaming industry. So we were never under innovation pressure, which in my view is also the reason why we are always a little bit behind when it comes to digital. So when Now I lost. Why do I say all that, Zanet? Can you remind me?
Okay, I'll give you some time.
Give
So
me
I'll
some
recap.
time to think about it.
ครับขออนุญาตจำอินแล้วกันนะฮะแล้วก็
I
recap
remember.
ภาษาไทยนะครับในช่วงนี้เราจะพูดถึงเรื่อง legal หน่อยแล้วนะฮะว่ามันจะต้องมีอะไรเข้ามาเกี่ยวข้องบ้างนะครับซึ่งวันนี้เราก็นอกจากคุณเทซี่กับผมแล้วก็มีคุณเฟเบียนนะครับซึ่งเป็นlawyer นะครับจากบริษัทลูเทอร์ซึ่งเป็นบริษัทเยอรมันนะฮะแต่ว่ามีออฟฟิศในประเทศไทยแล้วก็ทำงานทางด้านเกี่ยวกับlaw ทางด้าน exhibition ทีนี้ก่อนที่จะไปถึงจุดนั้นเนี่ยเรากำลังคุณเทซี่กำลังพูดถึงเรื่องของเหมือนกับกลยุทธ์นโยบายเนาะในเรื่องของการทำไมถึงต้อง JB นะครับแล้วก็ในการที่จะซึ่งมันก็จะมีอยู่หลากหลายด้านแต่เมื่อกี้สิ่งที่ผมคิดว่าน่าสนใจที่สุดก็คือว่าเขาพูดถึงว่าเราทุกคนจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยเราต้อง innovate นะฮะเขาบอกว่าโทรศัพท์ที่เราใช้กันเมื่อปี 1970 นะครับกับปัจจุบันนี้เนี่ยมันไม่เหมือนกันเลย totally different นะฮะโทรศัพท์ที่เราใช้ถือทุกวันนี้ไม่มีปุ่มไม่มีหมายเลขไม่มีอะไรทั้งสิ้นแต่ถ้าเกิดว่าเรามองภาพถ่ายของงานแสดงสินค้าในปี 1970 กับ 2022 เนี่ยมันยังเหมือนเดิมเพียงแต่ว่าสีมันเปลี่ยนไปเท่านั้นเองนะครับเราก็ยังมีบูธแล้วก็ยังมีคนมายืนขายของอะไรอย่างเงี้ยเพราะฉะนั้นในเรื่องของ innovation เป็นเรื่องสำคัญนะไม่งั้นสิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นอาจจะเหมือนงาน CeBIT ผมคิดว่าถ้าเกิดว่าหลายๆคนถ้าเกิดว่าแบบอยู่มานานหน่อยเนี่ยคงจะรู้จักงาน CeBIT ก็เคยเป็นงานเกี่ยวกับเทเลคอม IT อะไรทั้งหลายที่ใหญ่ที่สุดในโลกนะปัจจุบันไม่มีแล้วนะฮะตายอย่างรวดเร็วนะครับเพราะว่าตัว industry player กับสมาคมบอกว่าไม่เอาแล้วงานมันโบราณงานโบราณก็คือรายใหญ่ๆ walk out หมดเลยพอรายใหญ่ walk out รายเล็กก็ถอยออกหมดงานก็จากงานที่ใหญ่ที่สุดในโลกก็หายไปเลยภายใน 2-3 ปีเนาะนะซึ่งมันเกิดขึ้นได้นะครับเพราะฉะนั้นจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยแม้แต่ในอุตสาหกรรมของเราเนี่ยนะครับเราก็อย่า take things for granted แล้วเราก็ต้อง keep innovating เสมอOkay.
And now I can close the loop again. So I remembered why I came on that track is look at CeBIT. Why did CeBIT not happen after they launched their innovation concept? They even called it the new CeBIT. It was great. It was well regarded. But one day Microsoft called them and said, we are out. We are not coming back. The next day SAP called them and said, great concept. Really appreciate the effort you put in. We are out. We are not coming back. Dead. The good old CeBIT, the biggest show for IT, dead. Will not happen again. What a loss for Hanover. And I explained all this because I said I want to focus on associations and on major customers. You need, for the shows you are running, you need to be in the driver's seat when it comes to innovation, when it comes to strategy, when it comes to show development. I even, at UBM, I had my finger rule. I said, for sure I want to involve my associations. For sure I want to involve my customer, but I want to involve them. For sure I want to give them the feeling it's their baby. Hey, Microsoft, CeBIT is your baby. Hey, SAP, CeBIT is your baby. But the rule was I give them 20% decision power and I remain 80% decision power so that I'm, as the show, are always in the driver's seat. And that is a very, very important aspect in the framework, that you don't give too much power to your customers, to your associations, also not to your suppliers, also not to a venue when you're on your venue, because you become a less desirable target for potential buyer when they really do the due diligence on your product. Life cycle of a show, big question that always becomes very, very important in the framework for the buyer. And the buyer always wants to know, where is the show in the life cycle? Is it at an infant stage? Is the show growing, or is it in the growth, in the maturity phase, or is it also in the declining phase? At the moment, by the way, through COVID, it's relatively hard to say. So at the moment, the dices are thrown again, and shows who maybe were in the growth phase will go after COVID in the decline phase, depending on what the rebound or the rebuilding strategy would look like. Or shows who were declining maybe grow. I know a couple of show organizers who have totally different strategies now, who are saying, as a show, what we are at the end of the day creating is a touch point. A trade show is a touch point, and we have good access to the industry. So whilst the show is a very important touch point for my clients, for my exhibitors, my clients want to have more than one touch point. My clients doing business the whole year, and depending where they are with their sales funnel, they want to have other touch points alongside their sales funnel. And sometimes, as I have access to the industry, I can offer them a touch point digitally related to the show. So I could say, the show is in 3 months, here is a digital product launch, or here is a digital product innovation tour, look at the latest innovative products, and in 3 months you come to my show. So that is a touch point related to the show, or I can even offer touch points totally unrelated to our trade show. Exhibition organizers, we have big problems having this thought process even. But I know exhibition organizers who are moving into this type of thinking. I know other exhibition organizers who say, COVID, I tried out hybrid events, I tried it out 2 times, I burned my finger, it doesn't work, I go back to the good old show. These companies are less innovative because maybe you need to burn 9 times your fingers before the 10th time you offer a product that is good. So you stop when you only burn your finger 2 times, you stop too early to innovate. So through COVID, a crisis always gives innovation pressure, and some of our companies react very much, I wait until the good old days are coming back. Other companies are saying, okay, I want the digital money. I want to offer touch points which are related to my shows. I want to offer touch points which are not related to my shows. So here you will have totally different curves in 2-3 years of how a show is growing, because the KPIs, the growth KPIs will change, and you will make your show more or less desirable depending on how you react to the COVID crisis and how innovative or not innovative you are. Deal breaker, some deal breaker can even appear after signing. So it is a signage, like I said this morning, a contract is only the definition how a partnership should work, with all its eventualities and legal requirements and so on. A contract, a partnership bringing to life depends on much more than a contract. So there might be some events where the contract is signed and the deal breaker occurs, or the deal breaker can occur very little before the contract is signed. What was a deal breaker 2 years ago for many contracts? COVID, exactly. I think COVID was the biggest deal breaker in our industry. The whole M&A universe is put upside down through COVID. How do you value a show that didn't have exhibitors in the last 2 years? How do you investigate a growth rate when the last normal year was 2019? Which multiplier on EBITDA should you do? For sure, the seller will say, oh yeah, we take the multiplier 2019. For sure, the buyer will say, no. Let's assume something what you did in your first recovery year after COVID, and then maybe a little bit more. One person will have a multiplier of 10, the other person, or the other side will maybe have a multiplier of 4 or 5 or 6. So you talk about twice as much or twice as little money when you talk about COVID. So that is, in an M&A, we have companies, Cologne Messe, they're really consolidated. They get rid of their long tail. Some shows were ready to be retired. Like Photokina is a good show. Who's doing photos anymore? Nobody. Also was a big show. Other shows, big shows, simply missed the innovation cycle. Basel World, big show in Basel, really a big tree in the world was falling in 3 years. So at the moment, the times are really shaken up, and with deal breakers, we should expect every time. Here, talking about KPIs, I want to drill a little bit, or I want to give you 3 examples how KPIs could look like, or which type of statistics will appear in KPI reports. This is one KPI, revenue per employee benchmark. Here, that was actually from a project we did, and we looked at an acquisition target, and we looked at this company, and we calculated how much money is every employee doing from this company. So how efficient are they? How sales-driven are they? And then we benchmarked it to the industry average rate. And we said, okay, this company is generating revenue above the average or below the average. It's a massively important indicator for a buyer to say, okay, there are throwing many people on a very unprofitable product, or they have a slick and sim sales structure. They don't have a big overhead in the background. They make money. They have a high profitability. Another analysis form is the attendance number at the show. So we looked at all the attendance, actually exhibitors in that case. We looked at all exhibitor history, and we tried to differentiate the exhibitor history in decreasing exhibitors, stable exhibitors, increasing, and exhibitors where we don't know what their booking behavior is. So we looked at the booking behavior of their biggest customers and said, okay, stable 71%, increasing around 80%, 12% in our analysis, we were actually not so sure what is the booking behavior of this exhibitor group. And then you can drill in far more detail. Then you can do exactly the same and say, let's have a look how the American exhibitors behave. Let's have a look how the German exhibitors behave. I had an alternating show between Frankfurt and Paris. There we did this analysis. Let's have a look how the French exhibitors behave when the show is in Paris. Let's have a look how the Germans behave, what the booking behavior is when this show is in Frankfurt. So you get a lot out of these type of analysis about customer loyalty. That is one thing, but also about upsell strategies. The figures tell you much more about the sales culture than this partner ever can tell you in the meeting. And I can tell you about one conversation I had actually with a CEO with one of the big German companies. Friend is a big word, but we know each other since many years. And I said to him when it came to upsell, what is your upsell rate on your key accounts? Normal question in the UBM world, totally normal. And he said, what? And I said, first I really thought he didn't understand my question. I said, sorry, what is your upsell rate on your key accounts? And he said, can you explain me what that is? And I said, you have key accounts. How much do you upsell them from year to year? And then he said, well, we don't do that. We always offer the stand from last year. This is our quality promise. And then I said, can you give me the figure of your biggest show and the top 20 key accounts? Just for fun, I calculate how much money you lose because of your quality promise. And I showed him and I said, in the last 10 years, the upsell rate in my team was 5%, which means my team had to upsell every key account by 5% every year. And I gave him the figure, in the last 10 years, if your people would have achieved that, you would have 6 million more in your pocket. What can you do for 6 million? How much innovation you can acquire shows? Only by changing one tiny KPI in the sales process. And then he was quite shocked how much money they are losing by saying, we offer every year the same stand. this is our quality promise, and they haven't changed it because they are not culture, they're not profitability culture. They are more a quality-driven culture. But all these things you can analyze out of such a relatively easy methodology. And here the last thing I want to show you is the NPS score. You know what the NPS score is, or does anybody not know what the NPS score is? I explain it very quickly. The Net Promoter Score, and the methodology is very simple. You have a scale of 0 to 10, and you ask how likely is it that you recommend my show, not that you are coming back, that you recommend my show. And then you put everybody from 1 to 7 in the pocket of the destructor and neutral, and only 8 to 10 into the promoter, and then you divide one figure by another figure, and then you have your NPS score. So if you have 50 people in the pocket 8 to 10, if you have 50 people in the pocket 0 to 7, you would have an NPS score of 0, because 50 minus 50 is 0. So it's quite hard to get a positive NPS score. Tesla, Mercedes-Benz, they have NPS scores of 60, 65, 70, but these are products and consumer products which are emotionally the customer is normally attached. A B2B trade show normally has a NPS score from -7 to 0. It's an acceptable NPS score. Very good shows can have NPS scores of +20, +30, +40. I heard about a trade show that had an NPS score of 60, which I never heard before. The trade show in the Midlands, by the way, had an NPS score of -60. So that this show was about to die, that was very much reflected in the NPS score. But all these analyses, when we talk the whole day about KPIs, and you need your show reports, and you need your figures, and you need how many exhibitors came, the buyer will not just look at the figures and say, oh, this is interesting, or that. The buyer will run the figures through much, much more analysis than you see here on the screen. These are really only just a couple of examples.
Let me just recap. Can you go back
Yeah.
to that slide? Okay. ครับก็นิดนึงนะ2 สไลด์หลังสุดท้ายนะฮะก็คือว่าในการที่จะทำ M&A หรือ Joint Venture เนี่ยในเรื่องของ Life Cycle ของงานก็เป็นสิ่งสำคัญนะครับก็คือ Stage ต่างๆมันก็มีตั้งแต่เริ่ม Launch นะแล้วก็ Growth นะครับแล้วก็ Maturity ก็คือเริ่มอยู่ตัวแล้วนะฮะแล้วก็ Decline ก็คือลดนะครับแน่นอนว่าผู้ซื้อต้องการซื้อตอนที่มัน growth นะฮะเพื่อที่จะไป take profit เป็น cash cow ตอนที่มัน mature นะปัญหาใหญ่มากที่สุดก็คือที่เกิดขึ้นภายใน 2-3 ปีนี้ก็คือโควิดนะครับก็คือแน่นอนไอ้งานที่ใหญ่ๆโตๆที่เคยจัดได้จัดแล้วจัดอีกนะครับก็จัดไม่ได้นะฮะบางทีก็ต้องเปลี่ยนไปเป็นไฮบริดบ้างอะไรบ้างพอมาถึงตอนนี้นะครับผู้ซื้อก็เริ่มกลับเข้ามาซื้อนะครับผู้ขายก็เริ่มคุยด้วยแต่ผู้ขายก็ยังบอกว่าฉันจะขายเท่ากับตอนก่อนโควิดผู้ซื้อก็บอกเอาได้ไงอ่ะนี่หลังจากโควิดงานอยู่ลดไปครึ่งนึงหรือเลย1 ใน 3แล้วจะมาขายเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยมันก็ยังเป็นดีเบตกันค่อนข้างเยอะนะฮะในเรื่องของนั้นแต่นั่นก็คือว่าที่สำคัญอีกอย่างหนึ่งก็คือว่าที่คุณเทซี่เขาเน้นถึงเรื่อง innovation นะครับว่าให้ทุกคนเนี่ยพยายามคิดถึง innovation ที่เป็นไปได้เกี่ยวกับอินดัสทรีหรืองานของเราเพราะว่าเดี๋ยวนี้เนี่ย touch point ของคนเปลี่ยนไปนะครับ exhibition เป็นแค่1 touch point นะครับในเรื่องของการซื้อขายการพาณิชย์อะไรทั้งหลายเนี่ยยังมันมี touch point อื่นๆที่เข้ามามากมายที่เป็นดิจิทัลหลายๆบริษัทก็ตื่นตัวแล้วก็เอา touch point ที่เป็นดิจิทัลเนี่ยมาบวกกับ physical exhibition หลายๆคนก็ยังรอให้ good old days กลับมาก็คือวันที่ฉันยังมีคนมาเดินงานฉัน 200,000 คนเหมือนเดิมมี exhibitor 2,000 รายนะฮะซึ่งเราไม่รู้ว่าณวันนี้เนี่ยพฤติกรรมของคนเปลี่ยนไปมากน้อยแค่ไหนมันจะมีวัน good old days แบบนั้นอีกหรือไม่นะครับทีนี้มาถึงเรื่องของวิธีการนะฮะก็คืออย่างที่เราพูดถึง KPI นะครับเบสิกนี่เรารู้อยู่แล้วดู post show report เอาbalance sheet เอางบกำไรขาดทุนมาดูตีออกมาว่าราคาต่อตารางเมตรเท่าไหร่เนาะนี่รายได้ค่าใช้จ่ายออกมาเป็น EBITDA แต่วิธีมันก็มีวิธีอีกหลายอย่างนะที่ผู้ซื้อเขาดูกันนะครับอย่างเช่นอันนี้ผมก็เพิ่งเคยเห็น revenue per employee นะครับเห็นตัวเลขเขาแล้วช็อกมากเลย That's a real number, right? Revenue per employee.
That's a real number, yeah.
To the average one person makes 369,000
Yeah.
pounds
In that case, euro, but pounds would be
Euro.
also possible. Yeah.
โอ้โอ้โหเยอะอะนะคิดว่าบ้านเรานี่คงหารออกมาคงเป็น100,000 บาทนะเราหรือเป็นอย่างมากก็สัก1,000,000 บาทต่อคนนะฮะ โอเคงั้น
What
เรา
did
อา
you
ยเขา
say, Panada?
no we skip โอเคแน่นอนก็คือว่าอีกอันหนึ่งต่อไปก็ความน่าสนใจนะฮะคือไม่ใช่วัดว่าจำนวนคนที่มางานหรือจำนวน exhibitor เพิ่มขึ้นเท่าไหร่แต่เขาดูแบ่งว่าเป็นลักษณะของ exhibitor ที่ stable คือเท่าเดิมคือเจ้าเดิมฉันยังออกอยู่กี่เปอร์เซ็นต์อย่างในกราฟอันนี้จะเห็นว่า 71% ของ exhibitor ของเขาบอกยังฉันยังออกอยู่นะฮะ 18% เพิ่มขึ้นเป็น good sign นะฮะแล้วก็decrease คือไม่มีศูนย์คือไม่มีคนถอยนั่นเป็นสายที่ดีมากเพราะฉะนั้นงานนี้ stable และ growth ถูกไหมฮะนั่นคือสายที่ดีของ KPI อย่างนึงอีกอันคือ NPS นะครับ NPS นี่คือเรามักจะถามจริงๆผมว่านะเรา organizer ไทยเราไม่รู้หรอกว่าเขาเอาไปใช้ทำอะไรเรามักจะถามว่าคุณจะ recommend งานของเราให้เพื่อนของคุณมาออกงานหรือมาชมงานไหมนะฮะแล้วเราก็นั่งดูแล้วก็ดีตอบว่าเยอะดีแต่ของเขาจริงๆเขามีหลักมีการนะครับว่า0ถึงถ้าเกิดว่าเขาให้คะแนนตั้งแต่0ถึง10 0ถึง7เนี่ยเท่ากับ0คือไม่เวิร์กอ่ะคือธรรมดานะฮะแต่ยิ่งถ้าเกิดว่าได้5ได้4ได้3อยู่ด้วยก็ลากไปลบเนาะแต่ของเขาเนี่ยคือเขาจะนับเป็นบวกก็คือต่อเมื่อมัน8 9 10นี่คือเพราะคนเรานี่อย่างนี้คนเราเนี่ยข่าวดีเราไม่ค่อยบอกใครหรอกแต่ถ้าเกิดเราโกรธใครข่าวร้ายเราโพสต์แหลกประจานมันทั่ว Facebook Instagram ใช่ไหมแต่ข่าวดีนี่ไม่ค่อยบอกใครบอกเฉพาะคนบางคนนะเพราะฉะนั้นกว่าคนที่จะ recommend ในสิ่งที่ดีเนี่ยจะต้องชอบจริงๆนะเพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยนี่อย่างเป็นตัวอย่างของ3 KPI ที่เขาใช้วัดนะครับซึ่งจริงๆน่าสนใจสำหรับตัวเราเองในการวัดตัวเองด้วยนะครับโอเค
Okay. Because you asked, this is a real number. What are the 2 indicators to push this number to that level? One is you have good salespeople, right? Yeah. So you have people who sell. What is the other indicator? You have small teams. As easy as that. You run your shows with very small teams. How can you afford small teams? Portfolio management. Yeah. So here becomes close, or here we are closing the cycle. Why was UBM so profitable? How much money is Informa doing? 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion, something in that. How big is Informa? They don't have 30,000 people. Yeah, they do this 1.4 billion with a remarkably small working force. Yeah, this is how you get to this number. It's efficiency and good salespeople, good sales organization. This is how you can. And buyers, it depends. British buyers, we look at this. German buyers, less so. They look more at other things. But profitability-driven organizations will look at exactly these type of statistics. Okay, so very quickly the deep dive before I hand over to Fabian. It's controlling budget, document, and plan for international partnership. I don't want to go through this whole list again. Post-show report we talked about. Exhibitor contracts, service contracts we actually didn't talk so much about, but this is also very important. Agreement with associations. I told you my personal thought on associations. Keep them close to you. They are important, but never give up the driver's seat. Always stay in the driver's seat. And this is another example how we calculated the health status of a show organizer. In that case, it was a show organizer with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 shows. There was a very special show, so we put that a little bit to the side. And then we went simply through all cost positions and we made them visible in percentage bar charts. So where we could really say venue, we say that this show pays much more for the venue than this show. Could be a reason behind it, could be not. It's worth looking, does they have maybe a very old, unfavorable venue contract and have they negotiated a new venue contract? By the way, as bigger the show, read Exhibitions and UBM, we didn't negotiate venue contracts for our shows. We went to the venues and said, we come with 20 shows in the next 5 years, and we told them what we want to have for contracts. So when it comes to contracts for service providers and venue, size indeed matters. Then you have much more negotiation power. Then we were splitting it into marketing costs and sales costs, IT costs, and we tried to find patterns which look strange, or patterns we can't explain ourselves. Why is it that this show is paying so much for the venue? Why is it that this show has so much sales costs? Very often shows in the luxury segment, they have much more sales costs than shows in a non-luxury segment. So that would be a logical explanation. Very, very often, when you see the cost patterns in the cost budget seem to be very different, it comes down to one very easy reason, which we discussed in the structure session. The culture in the different portfolios is different. Sometimes it's really as easy as this, that one portfolio negotiates their own costs, another portfolio negotiates their other costs, or one business unit has a different cost culture and another business unit has another and also a different cost culture. So sometimes it's easy as that. Is this a bad news if you want to sell your show, or if you want? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Here you really can show transparency, because for me as a buyer, for me as a partner, if I like your show, I would say, great, here's a lot of potential for synergies. Here's a lot of potential for cost saving. Here's a lot of potential to make the show I like and I want to acquire, or I want to acquire a share, even more profitable. By me as a big organizer, I help them negotiating better venue contracts. Me as a big organizer, I help them bringing down their sales costs. So only because this is different doesn't have to mean that it's negative for the seller. It can be eye-opening, and it can be really a nice source for synergies in the partnership, to bring the partnership to life. Then the other needed controlling budget, ownership structure. Nino talked a lot about it. Tax documents, we will talk about it tomorrow. Non-disclosure agreements, Kevin talked a lot about it. Actually, tax, we have a whole session on tax tomorrow from Luther Law Firm. So LOI, again, Kevin talked a lot about it. Then the due diligence report, service agreements, rental agreements, conference options, and so on. All this information must be available and must be clean and must be maintained and must be professional. Normally, when we are running a due diligence process, or my company, we are running a commercial due diligence process normally, we have then a law company who's running the legal due diligence process together with us. So 4 sides are normally coming together: the buyer, the seller, an agency doing the commercial due diligence process, and an agency doing the legal due diligence process. The seller is uploading the document into the document fold, and these are easily hundreds of documents sometimes, which we then need to go through. We need to put them in proper data modeling files. We need to analyze them. We need to find patterns, and very, very often we then have meetings with a legal due diligence company where we see where maybe patterns don't add up, or we can't explain us why the show history is like the show history is. And it comes to the very first beginning of when I said, get your ducks in the row and get your documents, get your figures, get your post-show reports right. You want to jump in?
ครับนอกจากเอกสารที่สำคัญอย่างเช่นเราคุยกันเรื่องการเงินบัญชีอะไรต่างๆนานานะฮะอีกฝั่งหนึ่งนะครับที่ผู้ซื้อต้องการเห็นก็คือข้อมูลเกี่ยวกับ costing กับ expenditure นะครับอย่างเช่นอย่างที่เมื่อกี้คุณเทซี่ให้ดูนะฮะเขาวิเคราะห์เลยว่าใน structure 100% ของ cost เนี่ยเป็นอะไรกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์เป็นค่าเช่าห้องกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์ค่าส่งเสริมการขายนะฮะกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์ ค่าเกี่ยวกับมาร์เก็ตติ้งกี่เปอร์เซ็นต์นะครับคนซื้อเขาก็อยากจะเห็นอันนี้เขาอยากจะดูอันนี้เพราะอะไรว่ามันมีอะไรปกติไหมนะครับหรือ2เขาอาจจะมองว่าโอ้นี่งานนี้มันดีอยู่แล้วแต่รันไม่ efficient ถ้าฉันมารันเนี่ยฉันรันได้มัน efficient กว่านี้อีกฉันอาจจะแค่เข้าไปแล้วก็ไปทำคอสให้มัน efficient เนี่ยฉันอาจจะได้กำไรขึ้นมาอีก$1,000,000อย่างนี้เป็นต้นนะฮะแต่ตัวเราเองจริงๆเป็น organizer เราก็ควรจะดูนะครับบางทีเราก็ปล่อยไปเรื่อยๆเราไม่ค่อยดูว่าจริงๆแล้วมันบอลลูนไปถึงขนาดไหนแล้วนะครับนั่นคือเป็นส่วนหนึ่งที่เขาจะดูเพราะฉะนั้นนี่คุณเทซี่ถึงบอกว่าถ้าใครคิดจะทำธุรกิจกับต่างประเทศเนี่ยกรุณาจัดเรียงระเบียบเข้าของเอกสารอะไรของเราเนี่ยให้มันเรียบร้อยเข้าใจได้ง่ายนะครับแล้วก็ง่ายๆก็นั่ง summarize ไว้บ้างนะครับวันหนึ่งที่ถึงเวลาที่เราจะต้องคุยกับต่างประเทศเนี่ยเราจะได้คุยแบบรู้เรื่องเนาะนะฮะแล้วเราก็จะสามารถอย่างที่เรียนรู้จากอันนี้ก็จะรู้ว่าทำไม buyer เขาถึงขอข้อมูลพวกนี้นะครับแล้วเราจะ counter หรือเราจะ negotiate อะไรยังไงบ้าง
And it sounds a little bit when I just said all these due diligence report, service agreements, rental agreements, conference options, sometimes in small companies it's already a challenge because they don't have a saving system on their drive, on their company drive. Sometimes some contracts are saved here, other contracts are saved here. Sometimes that exists in an Excel table, sometimes that exists in a finance software and so on. It could sound a little bit overwhelming, but two things actually I like to go through such a process because you always learn about your own business. So even if the partnership would not come, it will push your business forward only by the fact that you do this exercise once. And B is what Nino said early, when you have a 3 million opportunity on the table and you think, okay, yes, it is painful to write a due diligence process or a report, or you think, yes, it is painful to write a post-show report, but you miss a 3 million opportunity, then you better want to sit down and write this report because you might regret it really for the next 10 years. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Is the investor interested in a minority, which you find very rarely? Normally an investor wants to have a majority, normally he wants to have 51%, at least the big companies. Is the investor satisfied with minority shares in the trade show? Management remains with the seller. Again, very rare. Minority investments are often quiet investment. Pure financial investors often avoid publicity. These quiet investments are coming. We have at the moment, we have a time when a lot of the old generation retires, and sometimes they want to have minority shares in return for an internationalization advice. It was actually Mike Rusbridge set up an investor club in London who did exactly this kind of investment. He said, I help you internationalizing your show and in return I get 10% of it. But I would be more prepared for the majority is with a buyer scenario. Countries' regulations differ from country. External companies invest or ownership. I think we gave you lots of examples, so I think we are currently closing a little bit the loop in the day. What kind of emotional impact has an investment in that country? That is sometimes, this is a point maybe we haven't discussed so far. A trade show is sometimes the quality stamp of a city, or a trade show is sometimes the pride of a country. Big trade shows can be really the pride of a country or of the region or of the city. And the Brits, they had for many, many years until today, they really had problems to go into partnerships with the Germans. The only substantial joint venture I actually can think about was Reed Exhibition Swiss Messe Berlin. Apart from that, all the German companies, they said, we don't want to have the Brits, even not as minority shareholder. We don't want to have them. We don't want to go in a partnership for two reasons. A, you have a cultural clash. Germans are more quality-driven. Brits are more profitability-driven. I would also say, by the way, Brits are quality-driven. So the Germans often say the Brits are not quality driven, to which I disagree, really disagree from the bottom of my heart. But much more important was this emotional side. Who is the owner of the trade show? The mayor of the city of Frankfurt, the country Hessian, the mayor of the city of Berlin, the mayor of North Rhine-Westphalia, and he don't want to have the headline in the newspaper the next day, our good old IAA car show or book show in Frankfurt is now in British hands. So he just doesn't want to have this headline. So here we have this emotional block to the country. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. ก็นอกจากเรื่องอื่นๆนะฮะมันก็มีหลากหลายที่เขาอาจจะเข้ามาเกี่ยวอย่างเช่นในเรื่องของกฎหมายของประเทศนั้นๆอย่างบ้านเรานี่ใช่นะฮะอย่างคือว่าจริงๆเปิดบริษัทอะไรก็ตามต่างชาติมาก็ต้องมีไทยถือหุ้นด้วยนะฮะซึ่งบางประเทศนี่เป็นต่างชาติเข้าไปเปิดบริษัทตุ้มได้เลย 100% นะครับของเราไม่ได้นะหรือว่าในเรื่องของแม้แต่อิโมชันนะฮะว่าเป็นยังไงบ้างนะครับอย่างเช่นเมื่อที่คุณเทซี่ให้ฟังว่าที่เยอรมันจริงๆแล้วมีอังกฤษหลายรายอยากเข้าไปจอยเวนเจอร์หรือเข้าไป M&A นะครับแต่ว่าเยอรมันไม่ยอมเพราะว่าเหมือนกับว่าแบบนะฉันก็เยอรมันฉันก็เจ้าคิงทางด้านนี้เนาะจะมาให้อังกฤษแต่เข้ามาถือได้ยังไงนะฮะหรือบางทีเนี่ยอย่างในเยอรมันเนี่ยพวกเมสเซ่ทั้งหลายจริงๆแล้วเจ้าของเนี่ยนะครับส่วนใหญ่เป็นเมืองนะเป็นที่ like city of Frankfurt right or municipality of Frankfurt of Munich they own the shows เพราะฉะนั้นเนี่ยเขาไม่ได้เป็นบริษัทเอกชนทั่วไปนะครับเพราะฉะนั้นทำอะไรเนี่ยเขาก็จะนึกถึงเมืองของเขาแล้วก็ประเทศของเขาอะไรอย่างเงี้ยเพราะฉะนั้นแบบมันไม่ใช่เรื่องของ profitability ทั้งหมดในการตัดสินใจ alright
And they have also, it's not only that the Germans are, and this is the last sentence for that, it's not only that the Germans are less profitable, Germans look on a trade show with different eyes. They say when I do a trade show in Frankfurt that brings 10 million to the trade show organizer, that brings 60 million to the city of Frankfurt. Because people sleep in hotels, drive taxis, go to restaurants. So there see the profitability and the economical effect for the region is for them an equally or a more important KPI than the profitability of a trade show in its own. So they do that for a very, very good reason that they say this show stays in Frankfurt as an example, or this show stays in Munich, and I will never go with a private shareholder as a partner, or I will never go with a profitability-driven companies, because I have my duty is to serve my city, and I serve my city through the trade show. Before we go now to our last guest speaker, to Fabian, with the framework, is there any question you have?
This is to think before we do the LOI, correct?
Is it before or after
This is before.
LOI?
Oh, this is what you should have in mind before the letter of intent. Definitely, many of these steps, or the letter of intent is one place, one step in the process. But you should get your reasons why you look for a partner. You should look for the partner, for the right partner. You should get your targets right. That all becomes before you come to the LOI. Then when you find the right partner for your ambition, that, by the way, that would be already quite unusual. Very often the buyer is finding the seller and not the seller, the buyer in our industry. But when you are in contact with a company, when you have a potential buyer, then comes the LOI, the letter of intent.
Okay, let me explain this in another way.
Yeah.
เธอเป็นสาวสวยนะทั้งหมดทั้งหลายทั้งปวงเนี่ยเธอแต่งตัวแต่งหน้าแต่งตาใส่ชุดอย่างงามนั่นคือสิ่งที่เราคุยกันใช่ไหม LOI คือมาถึงแล้วเจ้าบ่าวบอกแล้วโอ๊ยสินสอดฉันตกลงจะให้เดี๋ยวเธอแต่งงานกับฉันนะเดี๋ยวฉันคุยกับพ่อแม่เธอเอาสินสอด10 ล้านนั่นคือ LOI แต่มันยังไม่เกิดการแต่งงานนะยังไม่ได้เซ็นนี่หรอนั่นคือมั่น LOI เพราะฉะนั้นไอ้ที่เราพูดพวกนี้คือการเตรียมตัวให้งดงามเพื่อให้มีหนุ่มมาออฟเฟอร์สินสอด
ชอบ
ใช่ไหม
ทีนี้ที่คุณกวินบอกว่าไอ้ตอนที่จะทำ เริ่มมีคนมา approach จนกระทั่งมา LOI เนี่ยใช้เวลาประมาณ4 สัปดาห์ไม่แน่ใจจำเวลาพี่ว่าเยอะขนาดนี้มันทันเหรอคะถ้าโอเคถ้าเราแพลนมานานได้แต่ถ้าเราเพิ่งคิดเริ่มทำโหแสดงว่าไอ้พวกนี้เริ่มต้องเตรียมกันเป็นปีๆนะคะเนี่ย
จริงๆใช่เราต้องเตรียมตัวก่อนหน้านั้นยาวอย่างเช่นง่ายๆเลยตอนนี้บัญชีเธอส่งสรรพากรใช่ไหมเป็นภาษาอะไร
ไทย
ไปแปลเป็นภาษาอังกฤษก่อนก็ได้ภายใน4 อาทิตย์ก็บุญแล้วนะ
แสดงว่าถ้าคิดจะทำนี่ LI คงอีกนาน
ใช่คือต้องจัดเตรียมโน้นนั่นนี่นั่นโน้นมาพอสมควรนั่นคือมีความพร้อมนะมีความพร้อมเสร็จแล้วในขั้นตอนของการที่จะเริ่มที่จะคุยกับต่างชาติเนี่ยมันมีได้2 แบบหนึ่งคือเรา approach เขาก็ได้นะหรืออีกแบบapproach เขาก็ได้หรือเราติดต่อ broker ว่าฉันมีบริษัทอย่างนี้ฉันต้องการหา buyer broker วิ่งไปทั่วโลกหา buyer ให้เรานะแล้วโบรกเกอร์ก็กลับมาพร้อมกับโอเคเรามี3 เจ้าที่สนใจที่จะคุยกับคุณนั่นคือการคุยกับโบรกเกอร์
ดูย้อนหลังกี่ปีเพิ่งแต่งนี้ไม่ได้เลยนะแต่งสวยวันนี้
อย่างน้อย3อย่างน้อย3เท่าที่เคย
เพราะว่าเขาต้องดูย้อนหลังด้วยใช่ไหมคะว่าคุณ
ใช่แต่สำคัญที่สุดก็คือปีนี้คือปกติเนี่ยกว่าตอนแรกเนี่ยเขาจะแอบมาดูงานของเธอปีนี้ดูว่าเป็นยังไงฟีลเป็นยังไงแล้วเขาก็เดินคุยกับ exhibitor เขาก็เดินคุยกับสมาคมที่สปอร์ตเธอโน่นนั่นนี่งานนี้เป็นไง exhibitor เธอบอกงานนี้แบบต้องออกทุกปีไม่ออกไม่ได้เลยคือแบบยังไงก็ต้องเก็บงบมาออกงานนี้เขาแบบโอเคอันนี้คือเป็นคีย์อย่างนี้เป็นต้นนึกออกปะเสร็จแล้วปุ๊บเขาถึงจะเปิดตัวเข้ามาคุยกับเธอว่าเขาสนใจโน่นนั่นนี่ลักษณะอย่างนั้นหรือไม่อย่างนั้นเนี่ยเขาบอกเธอก่อนว่าเขาสนใจแล้วเขาจะมาดูที่งานแต่เขาก็รู้ป่านนั้นแล้วเราก็พาไปหา exhibitor ที่รักเรารักใช่ป่ะอะไรอย่างเงี้ยส่วนมากเขาถ้ามีโอกาสเนี่ยเขาจะแอบมาก่อน
โอเคค่ะงั้นไม่มีคำถามแล้วแต่อยากจะให้เป็นคอมเมนต์ว่าน่าจะทำไทม์ไลน์ให้ดูด้วยเพราะว่าพูดไปเนี่ยหลุดเราตอนนี้เราอยู่จุดไหนของกระบวนการอันนี้หรอ
แต่ว่าอันนั้นมันเป็นสไลด์เมื่อการเริ่มต้นมีการสนใจกันนึกออกป่ะ
มันลืมแล้วพี่เชื่อดิทุกคนก็ลืม
She forgot the timeline that it takes
What is the question actually?
I don't have question. It's just a comment that if you can show us timeline along the way of your presentation, that where we are at the moment for this process, so it will keep us in the same loop.
It's a great idea, and I might embed that in a future presentation. So it's really a great idea, with one exception: the timeline can be very short, can be very long. Yeah, I said an average timeline. I had one slide with 30 weeks. But I take your idea. It's a good feedback.
Yes.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I invite you to a coffee tomorrow for the idea. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. Another one, please.
ครับ
ฮัลโหลครับได้ยินไหมพี่ตังขออนุญาตถามนิดนึงคือผมเข้าใจว่าเราก็อยากได้โชว์ที่กำไรเนาะแล้วเราก็ไปซื้อถูกต้องไหมฮะทีนี้มันมีบางโชว์ที่มันกำไรลดลงในแต่ละปีแต่มันดูว่ามีแนวโน้มที่มันดีขึ้นอย่างเงี้ยปกติบายเออร์เขาจะซื้อโชว์ประเภทนี้ไหม
อันนี้ถามฝรั่งเนี่ย
ขอโทษ
Okay let's say we've got good
the questions get better as later the
it's getting more complicated so I throw it to you
okay
okay like okay our shows are pretty good right but the profitability has been decreasing.
Yeah.
But like other stuff are growing, maybe number of visitors.
Sorry. For example, like we run the show right for 3 years consecutively, but what we call the loss getting fever reduce and
less loss.
Less loss, but take a more profit in the fourth year, for example, like that. So
it's still at a loss, but diminishing loss.
Yes, correct. But the buyer will consider the show like this.
Which is loss making.
The show is not profitable yet, but let's say in the KPI, like the post reports, it's getting less and less loss, and it's about to อะไรวะภาษาอังกฤษเรียกว่า
break even point. There are two different answers. Is for British companies, very, very unlikely that you sell a loss-making show. Very unlikely. At the beginning of my presentation, I talked about different motivations, and do you remember I talked about the buyer view and the seller view? ROI, profitability, and so on, these are the normal primary motivations of a buyer. However, it could be also a strategic move. It could be also competitor exclusion. It could be simply that I want to occupy a market. Indonesia is a good example for that, where 10 years ago you saw the middle class in Indonesia growing so much from a small level, but growing so much that all distributor shows could be maybe loss-making, but it's a strategic move when you believe this industry is really there in 5 years. However, it is very unlikely when you talk to a British company. We had a threshold in my shows that every show that made less than 500,000 profit is about to jump over the cliff. Why? So we were even saying profitable shows are about to jump over the cliff. Why? Because when we put the resources in that show to keep that show alive into a bigger show, we make $1 million profit. Yeah? It's not only about profitability, it's also to put your resources wisely. There can be scenarios where you can sell a loss-making show, but hard to argue, and you want to have money for your show, right? How much money do you get for your show? You can't calculate the multiplier anymore. What is 6 times of minus 100,000? So you pay me 600,000 so that I take you the show? No, you would not do it. Then you need to calculate with other measures. Then you need to calculate with brand equity, with sweat equity, and so on. So much harder to calculate the price, but not impossible.
แต่ยากยังไงทนเอาจนกระทั่งกำไรก่อน สรุป
But if you have a loss-making show, if you give me 600,000, I take it. Okay? Okay, good. No, thank you very much. With this, I think we come to our next guest speaker, to Fabian, for our last case study, and then we move into a short workshop before we end the day. Fabian, stage is yours.
Sawadee-krap. I think this is already working. So yeah, thanks for having me. This is quite exciting. Thanks for Matthias, MBB, and the team, TCEP. I have to say, I only joined this afternoon, but I already learned quite a bit about this and found it quite interesting what my previous speaker were telling you here. I know that we have been stretching your time today quite a little bit, and I can promise you that the last part today, before you go into the workshop, will be rather crisp and short. As said, Matthias already introduced me. My name is Fabian. I work for Luther, a law firm here. I've been in Bangkok now for 2.5 years. We are advising a number of exhibitors, both here and abroad. And today I brought you one particular case study that I hope will be of interest for you, to point out a couple of differences here under the Thai legal system compared to some other legal frameworks in the region. The case that I brought for you today is that we have a company, a limited company that is incorporated in Singapore. The mother company is the organizer of the world's leading trade show for vegetables that takes place on a yearly basis in Germany. And Company A organizes since, yeah, very good. So this is amazing. Company A is organizing the show since 2002, so for 20 years, on a yearly basis here in Bangkok. And the spin-off show is attracting a broad bandwidth of international exhibitors, customers from all over the world. And from the inaugural spin-off of the trade show 20 years ago, Company A built an operational team here in Bangkok, decided, however, against establishing an own subsidiary or branch here in Thailand. Instead, Company B became the permanent operational service provider or supplier for Company A for organizing this spin-off trade show. And they used an agreement, a joint venture agreement, to set out the basic terms and conditions for this. Consultant, maybe I stop here briefly.
ครับก็อันนี้เป็นเคสสตั๊ดดี้อันนี้ของจริงนะความจริงแล้วนะก็คือมีบริษัท A นะครับเป็นบริษัทเยอรมันนะครับแล้วก็ตั้งแต่ปี 2002 เนี่ยก็จัดงาน X เนี่ยเกี่ยวกับ Fruit and Vegetable นะครับในเอเชียนะครับในประเทศไทยนะครับก็ได้มาจัดงานที่นี่นะฮะแต่ว่าไม่ได้ตั้งบริษัทที่นี่ไม่ได้ตั้งบริษัทในเมืองไทยนะครับแต่ก็จะใช้บริษัท B นะครับบริษัท B บริษัทไทยเนาะแล้วก็จ้างบริษัท B เนี่ยทำ operation marketing sale อะไรต่างๆนานาให้นะครับตลอดมาเรื่อยๆนะครับอย่างประสบความสำเร็จงานที่ A เป็นเจ้าของเนี่ยก็ประสบความสำเร็จด้วยการทำงานของ B
ครับขอบคุณครับ So the idea is now to take this up a notch. So basically, company A now wants to take up a stake in company B. So instead of a contractual setup, they have an equity setup. And the idea is that company A purchases a certain number of shares in company B. So we heard this already before. We had these examples with buying a car. So just to refresh your memory, the basic difference between an asset and a share deal is that asset deal is basically you go into the shop and you say, I want to buy the whole car if you acquire 100% of this. With the share deal, with the asset deal, it's basically, you have this with the share deal. If you say you want to acquire 100%, you go into the shop, you buy the car. Asset deal, you basically have a shopping cart, you walk through the shop and you say, I take a couple of wheels, I take a steering wheel, I take something else, and only basically pick the different cherries of the business. And our job in this particular deal was now that we had to assess for the client which setup, which acquisition is most beneficial for him.
ครับก็อันนี้ก็คือเสร็จแล้วเนี่ยด้วยความที่งานมันมาเรื่อยๆเนาะนะครับบริษัท A ซึ่งอยู่เป็นบริษัทฝรั่งแล้วกันบริษัทฝรั่งเนี่ยก็ตัดสินใจว่าเฮ้ยอย่างนี้ไม่เอางี้ดีกว่าไหนๆก็ยาวละดูถ้าจะยาวนะฮะมาซื้อหุ้นในบริษัท B ซึ่งปกติก็จ้างให้รันงานอยู่แล้วในเมืองไทยดีกว่านะครับทีนี้มันคุณเฟเบียนเขาบอกว่ามันแตกต่างจากการที่เราเดินเข้าไปแล้วก็บอกไปซื้อรถแล้วบอกซื้อรถทั้งคันเลยซื้อรถก็ต้องซื้อทั้งคันเนาะไม่เอาอะไรก็ได้แบบไม่เอาอะไรไม่ได้ถูกไหมฮะแต่ว่าถ้าเกิดเป็นลักษณะอย่างที่เขากำลังดูอยู่นี่ก็คือเขาอาจจะพลิกเป็นบางส่วนได้นะครับโดยการซื้อหุ้นเป็นจำนวนกี่10%ก็ว่าไป
So there's no, let's say, one solution or one shoe fits all. We usually like to say, okay, it depends how you structure this particular transaction. And there's a couple of things to keep in mind when you're advising the client. So for example, if they buy into this existing company, the question is what kind of benefits are there? What pros? So for example, are there any existing business licenses of company A that company B from abroad can make use of? What is the current reputation of company B that has been carrying out the activities here in Thailand? What about the network of customers? How familiar are they with the brand? And what about the experience of certain key staff of employees? On the other side, when you buy into this company, one of the things that we have to point out or that we look into quite detailed during the due diligence is what are the potential risks, especially with regarding to tax liabilities. So here corporate on the one hand side, but also personal income tax of staff, withholding and value-added tax.
ครับก็ในเคสนี้นะฮะในฐานะของ lawyer นะครับก็ต้อง advise บริษัท A หรือบริษัทฝรั่งเนี่ยว่าข้อดีข้อเสียมันเป็นยังไงบ้างแน่นอนการเข้ามาซื้อบริษัท B บริษัทไทยนะครับก็คือบริษัท B อาจจะมีชื่อเสียงที่ดีอยู่แล้วอยู่ในวงการเรานะครับตัวเน็ตเวิร์กด้านต่างๆไม่ว่าจะเป็นเกี่ยวกับลูกค้าก็ดีนะฮะหรือว่าเกี่ยวกับซัพพลายเออร์ก็ดีของบริษัท B ที่อยู่ในเมืองไทยก็ดีอยู่แล้วนะครับก็สามก็คือว่าคือพนักงานของบริษัท B รู้งานอยู่แล้วอะไม่ต้องสอนใหม่ไม่ต้องเอาใครมานะครับมาซื้อปุ๊บก็ hit the ground running ได้เลยนะครับแล้วก็แต่ว่าในขณะเดียวกันก็อาจจะมีข้อเสียนะฮะอย่างเช่นโดยเฉพาะที่ถ้าเกิดเป็น lawyer จะ concern เนี่ยคือเรื่องของ tax liability นะฮะบริษัท B เนี่ยมีในเรื่องของหนี้สินหรือในเรื่องของภาษีค้างจ่ายหรืออะไรหรือเปล่าซึ่งอาจจะเป็นไม่ใช่แค่ตัวบริษัทแต่อาจจะเป็นกรรมการเป็นอะไรอย่างนี้ซึ่งก็ต้องดิกดีลงไป
Another thing to keep in mind, and you probably know this as well as I do, is that under the Thai legal system, there are certain business activities that are restricted or prohibited for foreigners. So basically certain activities where for reasons to basically say not only protect but also to say that maybe Thai businesses are not yet ready to compete with foreign companies. They want to make sure that investors cannot invest there and obtain or set up, for example, a company with 100% foreign ownership, or where they can acquire the majority of the shares. If that is the case, if 50% or more of shares in a company are held by a foreign investor, this company will automatically be designated as a foreign and not as a Thai company anymore. And then it would be subject to the restrictions of the Foreign Business Act. And if that is the case, it becomes quite tricky. I guess good for you, not so good for the foreign investor, who may be interested in taking up a stake in your business. But obtaining a foreign business license, especially for exhibitors, is, based on our experience, very, very difficult. Another exemption can apply if there's a promotion from a board of investment. But also there, getting this for exhibitors is at least very, very difficult.
บอกว่าอันหนึ่งที่ต้องคำนึงถึงก็คือเราคงรู้กันอยู่แล้วนะฮะว่าตามกฎหมายบ้านเราเนี่ยต่างชาติจะมาเปิดบริษัทเนี่ยเขาถือได้แค่49นะฮะเรา51ยกเว้นว่าเป็นบริษัท BOI แล้วก็จริงๆยกเว้นอีกอันหนึ่งก็เป็นบริษัทอเมริกันเนี่ยด้วยอะไรสัญญา James Bowden อะไรสักอย่างจำไม่ได้แล้วสามารถถือเป็นเปิดเฟิร์มได้ 100% นะเป็นประเทศเดียวที่ทำได้นะครับแล้วก็หรือไม่งั้นต้อง BOI นะครับแต่ฝั่งเราเนี่ยเราบริษัทไทยโดยทั่วไปเนี่ยถูก protect ด้วยกฎหมายนะฮะว่าจะต้องถือ51ต่างชาติถือ49
Thank you. So you see this again here. The few things to keep in mind and that we have to point out is you have, first of all, the minimum requirement, 3 shareholders, whatever kind of company you have. You have the restriction of the shareholding, 49% foreign, 51% local. Otherwise, the company will be designated as foreign, and then it will become much more difficult to obtain the relevant licenses to continue carrying out your activities. And another thing to keep in mind is that usually there are no minimum share capital requirements. If the company is, however, designated as foreign, it will be at least 3 million Thai baht, again under the restrictions of the Foreign Business Act.
ก็ทั่วไปนะบริษัททั่วไปของไทยเรานะฮะหนึ่งก็คือว่าต้องมีผู้ถือหุ้น3รายนะครับแล้วก็ต่างชาติถือได้49นะครับถือเป็นบริษัทไทยถ้าเกิดว่าเกินกว่านั้นเนี่ยถือว่าเป็นบริษัทต่างชาติเพราะบริษัทต่างชาติเนี่ยมันก็จะมีกฎอะไรตามมาเพียบเลยอย่างเช่นว่าเงินจดทะเบียนตั้งต้นเริ่มต้นอะไรอย่างเงี้ยนะฮะก็ต้องเป็น 3 million you said for if it's a foreign company.
It's usually 2, and then there may be additional restrictions apply, and then it can be 3 million or even more.
จะ3 ล้านขึ้นไปหรืออะไรอย่างเงี้ยนะครับ
Thank you. So this, I don't have to explain in detail again. We had this already, the steps for the proposed transaction. It usually starts with signing of an NDA, term sheet LOI, and then the company that wants to pick up a stake in the target company carries out a due diligence. We usually only deal with the legal due diligence into the target company. And once this has been done, the council would draft from scratch or review the transaction documents, for example, the purchase agreement, shareholders agreement if not yet in place, and can also help to implement this, what Nino previously said, also in the articles of association, so the constitution of the business.
ครับก็หน้าที่ของทาง legal advisor นะครับผมก็คือว่าแน่นอนอย่างที่เมื่อเช้าเราคุยมาเยอะแล้วนะครับเรื่องของตอนแรกคือ NDA นะการไม่เปิดเผยข้อมูลสู่บุคคลที่3นะครับแล้วก็เกิดเป็น LOI นะครับสัญญาใจนะครับมั่นหมายนะฮะเสร็จแล้วเนี่ยก็หน้าที่ของทาง Luther นะครับหรือทาง lawyer เนี่ยก็คือทำ due diligence ด้าน law นะครับ legal due diligence ก็คือเข้าไปดูในความถูกต้องและความเป็นไปได้ของกฎหมายว่ามันไม่มีอะไรที่ขัดกฎหมายไทยนะครับสามารถจดทะเบียนได้ธุรกิจที่ทำไม่ถูก restrict อะไรทั้งหลายนะครับแล้วก็เสร็จแล้วก็draft ตัว contract นะฮะหรือตัว transaction document ขึ้นมานะครับเพื่อที่จะให้บริษัท A กับบริษัท B เนี่ยลงนามแล้วก็สามารถที่จะดำเนินการได้
Yeah, and the due diligence, here I will focus on a few main parts that were also relevant for this particular transaction. For us, it basically starts with drafting a tailored due diligence list. So we have a template, we send this to the client, they can tell us what would we like to focus on, and based on this, we will then review the documents that we receive, usually in a electronic format in a online room, for example, and then we review the documents and draft our report. And in this particular case, the client especially asked us to focus on the corporate side, corporate documents, so basically anything that had been filed with the Department of Business Development. So for example, any changes in the shareholding, any changes in the directors, board of directors. They ask us to have a look into the HR, into the employment, the labor side, and they ask us to pay particular attention to taxation. Here again, personal income tax, corporate income tax, withholding tax, and VAT.
ครับอันนี้ก็คือเป็นรายละเอียดนะครับของการทำ due diligence ด้านกฎหมายนะครับคือ legal due diligence นะฮะแล้วก็ถือหน้าที่ของทางลูเทอร์เขาก็ต้องเข้าไปดูข้อมูลพวกทั้งหมดเหล่านี้ขอข้อมูลขอเอกสารต่างๆจากบริษัท B ที่เป็นบริษัทไทยให้ส่งมานะครับแล้วเขาก็จะดูนะฮะจะเป็นพืชเลยนะครับเรื่องของข้อมูลนะครับเกี่ยวกับบริษัทที่ถูกต้องใครเป็นกรรมการมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงกรรมการโน่นนั่นนี่อะไรยังไงบ้างนะครับเรื่องของทรัพย์สินนะฮะทรัพย์สินทางปัญญานะครับแล้วก็ที่ทางต่างประเทศบอกมาเรื่องสำคัญก็คือให้ดูเรื่องของ liability คือเรื่องของหนี้สินแล้วก็เรื่องของภาษีค้างจ่ายภาษีของกรรมการภาษีโน่นนั่นนี่นะครับที่จะค้างจ่ายเพราะบ้านเราชอบค้างจ่ายนะฮะภาษีกันเยอะนะครับฝรั่งเขากลัว
Thank you. And I liked what Matthias said previously. The due diligence, I mean, usually it's only done when you have an interested buyer of your business. It's a little bit like, let's say, a medical checkup of your business. Can be a little bit painful, but I think it can also be very, very beneficial because there will always be things that I think you may not be focusing on, or there may, during the building of the business, may maybe not be the main point of, let's say, focus or attention. So it can easily be to lose track of this a little bit and then not put everything properly in place, for example, the business licenses, or to make sure that, for example, all the assets are actually put under the company and not under, for example, one of the natural persons, one of the shareholders of the business.
ครับอันนี้เป็นเรื่องที่จริงๆตัวเราเองก็ควรจะดูนะครับบางทีเนี่ยเหมือนเช็คอะไรนะเช็คสุขภาพประจำปีอะไรกันฮะบางทีดูเรื่องการเงินดูเรื่องรอเรื่องอะไรอย่างเงี้ยอย่างหนึ่งก็คือว่าฝรั่งเขาก็กลัวนะว่าไอ้ทรัพย์สินที่ว่าทั้งหลายเนี่ยเห็นวางอยู่จริงๆมันเป็นชื่อของใครเป็นชื่อบริษัทหรือชื่อของนายตังนายสานิตนะฮะแล้วพอซื้อปุ๊บนายสานิตขนของกลับบ้านหมดเลยเหลือแต่ห้องเปล่าหรืออะไรอย่างนี้หรือเปล่าอะไรอย่างเงี้ยนะเพราะฉะนั้นมันก็ต้องมีความละเอียดนิดนึงในการทำสัญญาพวกนี้
Thank you. So when this exercise is done, we're basically looking at the second last step. So the documents I think that you are by now fairly familiar with, share purchase agreement, the new or the amended shareholders agreement, customized articles of association that we need to register with the DBD, and the whole process and then the subsequent closing. Usually when we are approached, we provide our proposal, and that is also relevant for the fees on the assumption that this can all be done in a matter of, let's say, 8 to 12 weeks. Maybe sounds a lot in the beginning. Very often it takes longer, but this is at least the time frame that we have in mind and that we think is usually feasible for a transaction like this.
ครับพอตรวจอะไรรายละเอียดตรวจเอกสารอะไรทั้งหลายเรียบร้อยเนี่ยก็จะใช้เวลาประมาณ8 ถึง 12 สัปดาห์ก็คือประมาณ3 เดือนเนาะนะฮะในการที่จะ produce พวกเอกสารอื่นๆที่เกี่ยวข้องเช่นนี้นะครับก็คือว่าสัญญาซื้อขายหุ้นอันนี้ก็คือเบสิกฉันจะซื้อ 60% ของเธอด้วยเงินเท่านั้นเท่านี้เธอจะต้องโอนมาให้ฉันแล้วก็จดอะไรต่างๆนานานะครับแล้วก็ที่สำคัญก็คืออย่างที่เมื่อกี้เราคุยกันคือเรื่องของshareholder agreement อันนี้คือในฐานะของผู้ขายนะครับผู้ขายก็ต้อง protect ตัวเองด้วยการดูสัญญาระหว่างผู้ถือหุ้นที่ protect เราด้วยนะครับข้อบังคับของบริษัทต่างๆแล้วก็เสร็จแล้วก็คือสุดท้ายก็คือตราสารการโอนหุ้นแล้วก็ไปจดทะเบียนกับกระทรวงพาณิชย์
Yeah, I think that's fine. Oh, sorry. I think there was one more. Okay. Yeah, maybe to close this, I said I think here with the legal restrictions that you have in Thailand, you can be in a very comfortable position. When there's a foreign investor, for example, being interested in taking up a stake, acquiring a certain amount of shares in your business, because I said there's usually the 51-49% shareholding ratio to keep in mind, especially for the foreigner. The timeline I mentioned to execute a transaction like this can easily take longer, but based on our experience, 8 to 12 weeks. And as I said, it depends. Like, I think it's worth it to manage expectations in the beginning, to have a little bit of patience, especially when the foreigner is considering to buy into your company. As I said, it can take a little bit of time to compile all these documents. And also, something where we usually have to manage expectations is that we review everything, we may draft the necessary transaction documents, obviously in English, and then subsequently it takes a bit of time to translate them into Thai language, which we want to be done properly. We also want to include a clause in the agreements where we say that in case of a, let's say, maybe not dispute, but where one version may be interpreted other than the, so for example, the Thai version to the English version, which one shall prevail. And that we also have to keep in mind that the official documents we have to file with the Department of Business Development, so the official forms, also need to be prepared and need to be filed in Thai language.
ครับก็สิ่งสาเหตุที่ใช้เวลานานเนี่ยคือนอกจากจุดร่างเรื่องเห็นชอบระหว่างกันแล้วเนี่ยมันต้องมีการแปลไม่ใช่แปลเองนะฮะมันต้องแปลด้วย certified body นะฮะแล้วเสร็จแล้วก็คือส่งไป DBD Department of Business Development DBD ภาษาไทยพัฒนาธุรกิจการค้าขอบคุณครับนั่นนะฮะเพราะฉะนั้นมันใช้เวลาเยอะนิดนึงนะครับในการทำพวกนี้คุณเฟวิน I have a question Company B I guess they do other things except for servicing Company A before the conclusion of the contract correct
in this particular case no
so they just the only thing they do is do stuff for that's easy then all right okay understand
I said this for this case studies. I picked a little bit of information from here and from there. So of course there's different possibilities, but for this, for example, especially with regard to the shareholding restrictions, the point is that this particular company is only doing this one kind of business. If it would be other ones, I said then it's necessary to check are there possibilities to either pick up more of the shares. So for example, take up the majority as the foreigner. And then is it possible to get a foreign business license or BOI promotion? But that then really depends on the particular business segment that they're doing. So it can obviously be more than just servicing for this one.
Thank you. Any other question to Fabian? Chat.
May I ask, according to the timeline, when the lawyer should step in the process, I mean this all process of the legal, is it after or before or during the LOI?
It depends. Usually, I mean, we have some clients that approach us after the LOI was signed, for example. They said, okay, we already had commercial discussions, and this is what we have agreed upon, and we only start from then. Or they already involve us before, and they say, we have this company, this target in mind, and can you help us with the whole process? Can you help us with a letter of intent, for example? Can you help us with a non-disclosure agreement? So again, there's different stages, I guess, where we can come on board. And it's also a question of pricing, and I guess also experience of the client. Yeah. Some of them, they say, oh, we only need help with the legal due diligence, and we want to keep it as short and cheap for us as possible. We have already our checklist, so we want you to work through this and then draft your report. Other ones may have less experience, so they need the full package. And then they say, please support us from the beginning to the end.
Can I have one more question? I mean, during the process, after like, for example, LOI, the both party already agree on something. And when the lawyers step in and you reveal all the details of both parties to issue the contract or something like that. Is it the case that when you reveal both of that and you have some kind of opinion that they can go on or they can break up or something like that?
It can break up any time. So first of all, usually the letter of intent is non-binding. So it starts with this. And then let's say the final agreement, for example, to pick up the shares in the company and to pay the price would usually be subject to a satisfactory outcome of the legal due diligence. So it's always, again, it depends on the agreement they may be put in place, but usually it's possible to walk away from this. And what we do is, of course, we give a kind of recommendation, but let's say there's also different categories. So we have this long list of items that we can review. And then we would usually highlight it in colors like a traffic light and say, okay, no issues with the assets, everything green, or maybe some labor disputes. So this is yellow or orange. And then there's deal breakers that we point out. And then the client can decide, okay, we want to stop and step away. Or they say, we think this can be rectified. Please help us with this. Or this will have an immediate impact on the purchasing price. So also there's different outcomes.
Thank you.
This is also how I know it from Reed and from other companies. They have legal departments, and something for an NDA, they have the template for an NDA. For a letter of intent, they know how to write it. When the company gets smaller, then maybe they need help with an LOI. But the legal due diligence is then when it suddenly becomes very intensive. But then also the company need to trigger a commercial and a legal due diligence process. The company need to be very, very sure that they likely want to do the deal, because these processes can cost a lot of money for the. So then the company has decided by 70-80%, okay, likely we want to buy that other company. It's worth including a lawyer company. It's worth including a commercial due diligence company. Thank you very much, Fabian. One thing I have to clarify, this morning I said only my father calls me Matthias when he's angry. So just in case you wondered, Fabian is not my father, and I hope he is not angry about me. Okay.
Neither.
Okay, perfect.
I was not aware of this.
Thank you very much. Now we come really. Thank you very much. Now we come really to the last point, and that will be a very short point. We had a lot of discussions, we had a lot of sessions today, a lot of presentations. The last 15 minutes we would like that you discuss at your table, that you do a short workshop. And for that workshop, can you please raise your hand again if you're coming from an organizer? I know you come from an organizer by now. I know you come from an organizer. You come from an organizer. Is there any table in the room? Do you have it? You come from an organizer. You worked for Reed Exhibitions in the past, and now work for another company. Does you come from an organizer? Does your table has an organizer?
Yes, the big one.
Okay, so every table has at least one organizer at the table. I would like that you discuss in 15 minutes only. So have a very quick discussion. What would be a suitable model for your company? And you can also imagine a little bit the company you're about. You want to grow your sales. You want to sell your company. So imagine a case and have a discussion what would be the best model for your company at your table. Would you like to go in a full joint venture, company joint venture, or would you like to start with a product joint venture? So imagine a case, have 15 minutes this discussion. The first thing you do, please decide a person at your table who will speak, and in 15 minutes Zanit will go from table to table and will ask you which partnership model you have chosen and why you have chosen this partnership model. If you want to use a flip chart for your discussion, there are flip charts. Please feel free to use. Otherwise, discuss it in 15 minutes. Is everything clear what you should discuss in the next 15 minutes, or do you want to translate it, Zanit?
ครับก็นะฮะแต่ละโต๊ะนะครับก็เลือกเอานะฮะอย่าตบตีกันจะเอาเป็นบริษัทใดบริษัทหนึ่งนะครับแล้วก็คิดดูว่าทำไมถึงอยากจะร่วมมือกับต่างประเทศแล้วอยากจะร่วมมือแบบไหนอยากจะลอนช์งานใหม่อยากจะขายหุ้นให้หมดเลยหรืออะไรเงี้ยแล้วเหตุผลในการที่เราคิดอย่างนั้นนี่คืออะไรเพราะบริษัทเรามีอะไรหรือเราไม่มีอะไรนะครับแล้วเราอยากได้อะไรจากต่างชาติครับ
Have fun. The time starts now.
So the consensus between Informa and VNU is the suitable model depends on what that particular company does, what that profile is. It can be ranging from buying the whole company outright, or it can be from project-based project management or JV in the middle ground. So I would call it, we happen to be in a position that we're able to make decisions like that, or have the options like that. So I can't say for others.
So basically, you're open to many options depending on the business deal.
As far as it benefits the company in terms of revenues or connection or content.
Okay, thank you very much. First. นี่ครับคุณเอียวครับคุณเอียวเดี๋ยวหายไปไหน
สวัสดีครับได้เลยป่ะพี่ Okay. We assume that our team, we have a company, only one project, which is vulnerable for internationalize the show. So we assume that we have one project related to a key business. And then what we are looking for is that we have an objective that's to try to expand the show from Europe to the Southeast Asia market. So we are looking for the what we call the seller, right? We're looking for the seller based in Southeast Asia. Particularly, we're using the model that you just mentioned in the area, that the triangular for 3P, for example, starting from the product. We're looking for the company in Southeast Asia that organized the similar exhibition with us. Apart from and also they have association in Southeast Asia or exhibitor in Southeast Asia in their exhibition to at least 20%, and also database, for example, like that. The second thing is that we look at for the financial, which is related to the P&L, and also the people, the skill, workforce, quality, structure, which is conglomerate with us. That's what we try to do.
Thank you very much. So this is a buyer นะครับ จำไว้นะนี่ buyer นะฮะ โอเคครับขออนุญาต
สวัสดีครับพูดไทยนะครับ
ไทยก็ได้
ก็คุยกันในกลุ่มนะครับต่างความคิดก็ยังไม่ตกผลึกนะจริงๆยังคุยไม่เสร็จก็คงจะสนใจเรื่องโชว์พาร์ทเนอร์ชิพเนี่ยแหละนะครับเราเป็นโลคอลฝรั่งเป็นอินเตอร์เหมือนการมาจอยกันก็ดีคือความเป็นนวัตกรรมอะไรต่างๆของต่างประเทศเข้ามาส่วนของเราก็คงเป็นเบสเรื่อง operation เรื่องความเป็นโลคอลด้าน selling เรื่องอะไรต่างๆก็คงประมาณนี้ครับเดี๋ยวให้เสริมนิดนะครับจากประสบการณ์
พี่ปุ๊เติมพี่ป๊อปเติมหน่อย
ก็จริงๆเราสนใจเพราะว่าบริษัท PK นี่ทำไทยเที่ยวไทยอยู่แล้วดังนั้นก็จะเป็นแค่โลคอลส่วนมากดังนั้นการที่เราจะไปเป็นโปรเจกต์เบสยังไม่จอยเวนเจอร์นะคะคือเป็นโปรเจกต์เบสนำมาโชว์ต่างประเทศเข้ามาเป็นโคโลเคทโชว์ค่ะแล้วก็เจรจากันเรื่องของการแบ่งปันการที่จะทำ profit sharing ก็จะเน้นไปทำทางโปรเจกต์มากกว่านะคะ
ก็คือทางทีมอยากจะได้เป็นลักษณะของโคโลเคทแล้วก็เรื่องของเอาอินโนเวชันของทางต่างประเทศเข้ามา
ใช่ค่ะโชว์เราก็จะใหญ่ขึ้นมาเลยอินเตอร์ทันที
ขอบคุณมากวิ่ง
Okay, so in this case, we are the joint venture partner, and so we work with Informa Market. Earlier in the history of before COVID, actually, we have a medical device exhibition called MedLab ASEAN. And from then on, at the, I think, second year of the MedLab ASEAN, Informa approached us and indicating the interest to joint venture the show in Thailand. In fact, they have actually moved the show from Singapore. It's called MedLab Asia and Asia Health from Singapore to Thailand. The reason being Thailand is a more strategic market for the medical industry, and for us, actually Impact is a venue and also the organizer. So we do see a lot of the benefit for us in terms of internationalizing our show, in terms of revenue, in terms of the team learning how to work
in an international way. And of course, as a venue, we also get the additional revenue for the venue part. So yeah, so far it's a sound decision, and we will be having the show in October soon.
Okay, thank you very much. ตึงใครเอ่ย
Hi, I'm from Indeed Creation. As of now, we have so many portfolio that we already work on operation partnership. And let me talk about some example. The show we call AW, Affiliate World Asia. That is a very big conference about the startup that our client do in 3 countries in this world. The first one is Barcelona, Spain, and Dubai. And the last one is in Bangkok. And we, Indeed Creation, hold this project for the operation partnership. And what we are looking for and try to do to improve our business is we would like to be the project joint venture with our client and trying to do soon. Thank you.
Okay. ครับ
Thank you. For my company, I started since 2002 and represent Messe Düsseldorf in Thailand. And within 2 years, they start talking to me about acquisition at that time. And I have no idea at that time what are they, so I rejected it. Which no regret. Now, I have another company in 2017. So we started this company to do event management. And that's where we start a project JV in Thailand. So now we're doing one show and we plan to expand another show with Japanese company and association. And we hold on to this because of COVID. So now we're coming back and going to discuss again with the Japanese team. Beside that, content partnership, sales partnership, marketing partnership, operation partnership, we have been doing this for 20 years.
Thank you very much. มีจิตตาป่ะไทยก็ได้
ค่ะหมิวนะคะจากบริษัท Exposys ค่ะก็คือจากการที่ทำงานบริษัท Exposys มาค่ะคือของเราเนี่ยมีโปรเจกต์ Joint Venture กับทางต่างชาติหลายงานอยู่เหมือนกันมีทั้งของ DMG จากสิงคโปร์นะคะแล้วก็มีที่เป็นของญี่ปุ่นของทาง Japan Management Association นะคะแล้วก็มีที่เราแบบว่าบริหารจัดการให้เขาด้วยอย่างของ Messe Düsseldorf อะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะก็เลยเมื่อกี้ก็เลยแชร์กันในทีมนะคะแล้วก็เรามองว่าจริงๆตอนเนี้ยน่าจะเป็นโปรเจกต์ Joint Venture อะค่ะที่เหมาะกับเราที่สุดคือด้วยความที่เรารู้สึกว่าบริษัทเรายังไม่ได้ใหญ่ขนาดนั้นตัว structure หรืออะไรต่างๆอะค่ะแล้วก็ที่สำคัญอีกอย่างหนึ่งที่เรามองตรงกันก็คือเรื่องของคือเหมือนพอเรา develop โชว์ขึ้นมาเราสร้างโชว์ขึ้นมาค่ะเราอยากจะเป็นการ joint venture ในการดึงต่างชาติเข้ามาshare knowledge know how แล้วก็แต่ว่าเรายังต้องการมี sense of owner อะค่ะแล้วก็มีสิทธิ์ในการตัดสินใจหรืออะไรต่างๆอยู่ด้วยอะค่ะก็เลยคิดว่าตัวโปรเจกต์ Joint Venture น่าจะเหมาะกับเราที่สุดขอบคุณค่ะ
เธอป่ะ
Okay. Okay. Our company is AI Interlink Group. Is have 5 company. It's 2 company in cooperate with is Thai company 2 company and then European 2 company and another one is a US company. And then the next project is about the cannabis. That exhibition that bring that well known from US that we have strong about the technology and the research that a long time for medical treatment. So in Thailand now they concerned about cannabis in to develop the product for Thai product to launch to another. But the well-known technology will be bring from US. So this is for the joint venture. I think it's a better way because in 5 company that in the AI link group, Interlink group is a joint venture together for a long time. Thank you.
Okay.
You hear me now? Okay, again, I think it was a very, very nice ending to the day that we had group discussions and that you shared your thoughts with us. For me, the day was really a reminder why I love to be in Bangkok. It's so much positive energy, so many polite people. The culture is to be polite, like you said early, but so much positive energy and so much forward-looking energy. So for me, it was a great, great day as well. I hope you take 1 or 2 or 3 points away for your future work. Tomorrow we have another 4 sessions. Tomorrow only the first session will be with me as a moderator about commercial due diligence. And then we have 3 other moderators. Fabian, you already met, and 2 more colleagues from LUSA talking about tax, legal aspects, and specific Thai legal aspects. And we have guest speakers. Panada will be a guest speaker, Pusit will be a guest speaker, and I'm sure we will have another great day. We start tomorrow at 9, Chet, is it right? Yeah, so we start tomorrow at 9 here, maybe come a little bit early so that you have a cup of coffee and something to eat. But with this, I want to thank you, TCEP, for this great day and to make it possible. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Zanit, I want to thank you for doing my English into something understandable. All the teams in the background, I want to thank you. Chad and the team from TCEP, and I want to thank you, all of you, for your great participation. Have a great evening and see you tomorrow, maybe 8:45. Okay? Have a great evening.